When you're inside a toxic relationship, you eventually become a shell of who you used to be. Like the version of you that you started off life with, the version of you that you started into the relationship with used to be a certain way, used to show up a certain way, and now it's gone. Now, once you consider as you walk through this, you're going to feel at times crazy. You're not. This is actually a normal thing that happens when you're in a toxic relationship. Most people are like, oh, like, I can't believe I'm even showing up this way. In my world, I'm used to people showing up that way because of the abuse that they've endured. Bear with me and we'll talk through this a little bit. Has this happened to you? If it has, I want to talk through this and I want you to understand this. Okay, because it's very easy for this to happen over and over and over. Have you been stuck in a toxic relationship? Does this relationship look toxic? Like, what's actually going on for you inside this relationship? Let's see if we can break this down a little bit more as we move into this piece of losing yourself inside of a toxic relationship. Now, when we think about this, okay, there is a version of you that starts off inside the relationship. Okay, oftentimes this version of you is confident. Okay, oftentimes this version of you is happy because you're with the person that you actually love. You're with the person that you actually care about. But then over a period of time, this version of you, in reality, it really shrinks. Oftentimes, one of the things that people say is the version that I'm now, it feels like a shell. Like empty. Like the person that I am now feels like an empty shell. Like not the person that I used to be. Because I used to have this confidence. No more. I used to be happy in a relationship. No more. Like I used to be connected, no more. And the list can go on and on and on. And typically this shell of a person is dealing with a lot of things. There's a lack of confidence that typically ensues. And a lack of confidence being like, you might look at yourself and be like, I know that I'm a confident person. Like I know that I'm capable. You might even know that you're capable because you see it in the business that you run. You're like, I'm efficient at what I do. I'm really good. But then you come home and you're left feeling like you're crazy. Crazy is a huge one. People are like, I feel crazy inside this relationship. I feel like it's all my fault. I feel like nothing I do, that nothing I do is ever good enough, or that nothing I do is right. Oftentimes, the good enough piece is a huge, where like, I don't feel good enough. And I need you to understand, like, as you look at this, there used to be a version of you that was confident, that was happy, that was strong, and you've shrunk. I mean, that's really the best way to put it. Like, you've actually shrunk from who you used to be. You shrunk from your God-given purpose of who you were actually called to be. The version of you that you used to be a person that was confident, that was happy, that was secure, that was moving forward in your clarity and your certainty of the direction you wanted to go. You had purpose, you had a calling, you had dreams, you had a vision of who you wanted to be. And now, what does that look like? Now, typically when we talk to people, we're like, hey, let's try to find all the pieces to start putting you back together. The problem is sometimes people have been in a toxic relationship for such a long period of time that they feel like there is no hope. That empty shell that I mentioned earlier, like what this typically looks like is it brings you to a place where it's not just an empty shell, but it feels and it gives you this idea of hopelessness. Oftentimes leading to a state of depression. Now, typically, when we're moving into the state of depression and hopelessness, it's affecting a lot of different areas in your life. Easiest one that it starts off first off is just how you show up physically. Like inside your body. We'll see people that have been to the gym. Like you go to work, you go to the gym, you've done stuff to be able to increase like your strength, to increase your stamina, to increase your energy, and you just stop. You're like, why should I keep doing this? Because he doesn't see it. Like, why should I continue doing this? Because like he keeps saying like I'm getting larger no matter what I'm doing. Like he keeps like shaming me for the clothes that I'm wearing. He keeps putting me down. Like, what's the whole point? Like, he left me because I was too fat. And so as a result, you continue to try to do stuff, but you're like, this isn't working. People often get to this place where they feel hopeless because they're like, no one's going to love me after this. No one's going to care. This was the one. This was my soulmate. But he's gone. Do you resonate with any of this today? Do you see how this can impact you in a great deal? Many times it comes into eating habits, where you start stress eating. You start not eating. Either way. We see people that gain a ton of weight by being in a toxic relationship. We see people that lose a ton of weight. Either way, this will affect you. And just looking at this one example, if we talk through this piece of body, what normally happens? A lot of times you'll see headaches. You'll see migraines. You'll see a biggest one, which is probably lack of sleep. You'll see hair loss. You'll see aspects of even developing different disorders. There'll be different things that'll be messing with, like, your gut health. There'll be aspects of autoimmune that'll kick up. Maybe you already have been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. It'll get worse. Or you developed it while you're in the toxic relationship because of the stress, because of the frustration, because of the anxiety, all the different things that are happening. Like, these are just a few. This is why when I meet with a client in the first time and I'm trying to ask them of, like, what's going on, how can I help, figure out where they are first, I have to be able to establish all these things. And sometimes they look at me funny of like, why are you asking me how it's impacted my body? And I'm like, that's because it normally does. That's because you can't go through this type of trauma, this type of abuse, this type of, like, mental and physical, like, mind fuck for you to get to the place where it's not going to affect you. Like a simple book, The Body Keeps the Score, of like, hey, your body is going to be a showcase for the trauma that you're experiencing. So mentally, you might be strong and maybe you're handling it and you're dealing with it and you're powering through, but it's going to break down your body. It's going to break down something in your life. It always does. There's a level of, like, the trauma and the abuse that you're going through that will eat you up in one aspect. Maybe it's your body, maybe it's emotionally, maybe it's spiritually, maybe it's, like, physically how you're showing up, maybe it's in relationships that it's destroying it. Like, there's so many different aspects that we could apply it to. But just looking at one small area, like the meat suit that you're in right now, your body, how has it been affected? Because we can talk through how the depression's kicking in, how the hopelessness is kicking in, how all of a sudden you're dealing with more anxiety than what you've ever dealt with in your life. Like, the stress becomes overwhelming and you're like, I don't even know how to make decisions. You're at the place where you're confused, where you're lost, where you have no clarity, no certainty. You don't know what's right. You don't know what's wrong. You don't know what's up. You don't know what's down. And you're left then beating yourself up because you're looking back and you're like, I remember who I used to be. I remember that version of me that was amazing, that was wonderful. And you start to do the narcissist's job for him. Because you start to beat yourself up because you're like, I'm not that person anymore. Sometimes you'll look at yourself now in this version of you. And you'll start to beat yourself up because of how long you've stayed in the relationship, because of how much you've changed, because of how much you've lost, because of the time that's been wasted, because of how it's affected you, your kids, your family, everything. Then I want you to take a moment and just pause. And I want you, as you look back, to give yourself some grace. You're like, why would I do that? Because if you're in this place where you're realizing you're an empty shell, you're hopeless, you're depressed, you have anxiety, you have stress, you have confusion, you're probably looking back at that old version of you, the one that was confident and happy and content, and you're probably starting to beat yourself up. It's like, wow, I was so stupid to stay in this relationship for this long. I can't believe I stayed with him for 10 years, for 25 years. Oftentimes when you keep doing this, you break yourself down into such little pieces that the narcissist already broke you and you're kind of doing the rest. Like, he broke you into pieces and then you're going back through and you're jumping on the pieces, shattering them into powder. thinking that that'll make you feel better. But in reality, all it does is further the anxiety, the stress, the depression, and it leaves you in a place where you definitely feel hopeless because you're like, there's no more pieces. Is there no more pieces, or are you stomping on some of the pieces that are left because you're not willing to give grace to yourself? You're not willing to give grace to yourself. If you didn't see this, you didn't understand this, you didn't have the education to know this, but what are you going to do now? Because we can keep focusing on this old version of you. We can keep focusing on this current version of you. Or we can focus on the version of you that you actually want right now. What does this version of you actually look like? Bringing back your confidence, bringing back your power and who you are and how you're healing, moving to a place of being healed, moving to a place of being healthy, moving to a place of being whole, being a positive leader for your kids, having a positive mindset, just overall, the positivity that you're able to showcase, that you're able to be a part of. How you're actually showing up with no stress, with no anxiety, dealing with the triggers, dealing with the emotions. Able to stand confident, able to have peace, and able to have joy. That's the version that we're trying to unlock. That's the version that I'm leading people to see and to have in their life every single day. The question is, are you going to keep beating yourself up about who you used to be and who you currently are now? Or will you actually take a choice to start moving forward in your healing for you to become the best version of you?